Namaste, this is Nikita Gautam. Today we have with us Mr. Manish Khemka, Executive Director of BLC Holdings Private Limited. BLC Holdings has been operating companies in sectors including agribusiness, healthcare, manufacturing, nutrition, education and community development. BLC is also the parent company of Norvik International Hospital. Mr. Khemka is associated with CNI NYEF. He also represents CNI in National Planning Commission. He is a graduate from Harvard Business School. Today's talk will be basically about the health sector and also opportunities in agribusiness. So let's welcome Mr. Khemka. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Nikita. Thanks for inviting me here.
Okay, so as this is the time of crisis, so basically we'll start with a question related to health sector. So generally, how Norvik Hospital has been tackling the situation during the pandemic?
Pandemic still going on, and then like when it started a few months back, we all were very confused that how the situation will be and how it would be like. So we all had only like seeing what is happening in the world, and then we were seeing that we'll be able to save our country completely by not letting this happen to us. And to the extent that like if you remember, like there was a time a month ago almost, like we were planning to celebrate a Visit 2020 in Nepal, and then we also made a big announcement to the world that Nepal is COVID free and please do visit Nepal, so don't shy away to visit Nepal. So this was the situation. I mean, like, so that shows we missed the gravity of the situation, we missed the gravity of the problem, that how big this problem would be in days to come. So even the World Health Organization was quite misleading in this fact. So when it started, we all were confused how to deal with it, and we were completely unprepared. But fortunately, our management was, like we were well connected with a different part of the world, and then when we observed the situations, we could sense it that it's not going to be easy days for us in days coming. So we started immediately building up an isolation ward, so that at least patients who visit us, in those days we can at least keep them separate from the normal patients, because that's going to be very critical, because it's spreading like anything. So that was a priority, that we built up the isolation ward, we made it ready. Almost 10 to 12 beds capacity of the isolation ward, we made it ready. And then this is how we started coping up with the situations. But then the government announced the lockdown, and then the lockdown, and then the 3 months of the lockdown, if you see, we never had such a big cases in Kathmandu. So what we're doing as a precautionary, any patients who used to come with the symptoms of COVID, like fever or any disclosed or identified symptoms, we used to put them in isolation ward first, then they used to send their testing, and then if they used to come negative, we used to take them into the main hospital center, and then we used to treat them for the disease they have actually come for. And if they have found positive, we had only 1 or 2 cases, so we referred them to the government hospital. But that was also later on found that we can say that there was no cases of COVID as such in the Norway.
Initial days,
In initial days, or even till today, there was no such cases. So far we are fortunate, but at the same time, we know one day it will come that we have to face it. So this is how initial days were.
Okay. So especially during the initial days, there was a hesitation among the private hospitals not to treat the other patients. So how did Norvik responded during the period?
I mean, if you put it in right way, there was not a hesitation from the hospital as a business. There was hesitation from the resources, the doctors and the nurses and the paramedical staffs. Because as you all understand, the situation was so confusing. There were not enough data available that how it would go, what should be the precautionary measures. And secondly, there were no equipments available. If you want to talk about PPEs or any gears to take necessary precautions, they were not evidently available to the health staffs. So that were creating kind of confusion as well as risk among the mindset of the people who provide the care providers. But fortunately, Norvik was in forefront in the sense that we started isolation ward, and then we also imported all the required gear from the China by even paying them 3 times, 4 times prices, and even we donated the Nepal government to the extent of 1 crore of the PP gears and all, so that even they can equip the government staff. So we were fortunate in that way. Our staffs were fortunate in that way that we could arrange the required gears, required safety equipments to them. So at the Norvik, it was never an hesitation, because we had isolation ward. We could train the people, we could have identified people who were voluntarily ready to come forward and serve the people. We incentivized as well at the same time to our people, and then that's how we were doing it. So there was never any hiccups in Norvik, even those days in the lockdowns on the start of the pandemic, that how we'll treat the patient. It has never happened a case that somebody came to us and we have referred them back, okay, you go, we will not admit you. It was never a case with the Norvik.
So, touch wood, if the pandemic turns out to be more threatening, what are the preparations of the hospital?
I mean, if it turns out to be that seems that's quite possible. That seems quite possible.
Cases
we cannot close our eyes. We cannot close our eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at that time, what best needs to be done, the Norvik would be there to do its part, because it's because you see, it's unlike the other business. Unlike the other business where when there's no business, you shut down your business and then you lay off people and all that. Norvik or other hospitals, it's a different. So even we didn't have any business, we were running with full capacity, in sense of we have a full team ready. Mm-hmm. So we didn't lay off people. We have all of them with us, working with us, so that if such situation comes, we should be ready enough, because we already have a very minimal infrastructure in Nepal, to be very honest.
True.
So if whatever we have, if we compromise with that, then of course there will be no sign of hope for anybody as a citizen. So our management, our chairman, is a very responsible person. And we always thought of it, and we always preparing ourselves every day. And we know the day would come. The day would come that we have to face it. So we will do our best. I mean, when the situation would be so that the private hospital has to be converted into the COVID hospitals, we do our best. I mean, we'll be with the government. We'll fully support the government in whatever needed to be done at that point of time.
Okay. So recently, Norvik has also initiated telehealth service, which is actually believed to add value to the healthcare system accessible in a country like Nepal, which is geographically challenged. So could you share us something about the initiation?
I mean, if we talk about the telemedicine, it's a very small part of the entire digital world. So there's a big disruption in the technologies happening around the world in all the sectors. You talk about entertainment, you talk about business, you talk about agriculture, you talk about any arena of the business. There's a disruptive technologies are happening. They're changing the entire gamut of the business. I mean, how they are being done in say 10 years ago and how they are being done now. So healthcare is one of the promising sector where a lot of things can be done in terms of digitalizations. Like if you talk about, I mean, when you talk about the healthcare, you talk about people, you talk about the products, you talk about the process, you talk about the providers, and you also talk about the payers. Because in most of the countries, this insurance company takes care of the payments. So they are the 5 P's which you can think of where the technology can actually improve. And then if you see a lot of things happening, a lot of artificial intelligence is really changing the game in the healthcare, the biosensors, the 3D printing, I mean, the wearables. Now you can have your mobile vehicles which can check your BP, which can check your oxygen level. So the wearables and also. So there's a lot of changes happening in all the entire ecosystem of the healthcare. So telemedicine is a very small segment of the entire technology game, and it has to be. I mean, because the way the healthcare is becoming expensive, it is very much needed that technology should make it more affordable, more accessible, and at the same time more impactful. So if we talk about telemedicine, it just provides access to the people who are not being able to physically present themselves to the doctor for their cure and for the treatment. But then a lot of things like mobile health, a lot of variables. So these are there which can actually help in in bringing the change or in the entire process of the treatment. And if we talk about Nepal, I mean, you see the population is getting aging. So, I mean, then we are geographically, as you rightly said, we are so diversified in the sense that the population, urban population, the villages, and then the VDCs and all. So it's a very the distribution of the healthcare is. I mean, if you see Kathmandu, you have a different perception about the healthcare in Nepal.
Exactly.
But if you go to the remote part of Nepal, you will terrified.
Exactly.
Actually, you're
Yeah.
terrified to the sense that the treatment is not actually available. If you talk about the health post, most of the time they are out of the medicines, basic medicines. They are out of the basic medicines. So, and the doctors, they don't want to go to, because they don't have a life. It's not just they don't want, because at the end of the day, when they're done with the duty, they should have a life. So since their family, educations, nothing is there. So they don't like to be centered themselves into those areas, you know. So telemedicine could be like a solution whereby the senior experts can, you know, like provide treatments to like the patients who are there, you know, like the remotest part of the Nepal. They can come to the health post, and then the senior doctors from Kathmandu or the other part of the world, in fact, which can provide, which can review the case and can provide the right kind of the can prescribe the right medicines and right treatment. But it's a very much need. But I think we are very much delayed, and because of the delay, a lot of things are the constraints, and one of them is the government policies. So the government policy doesn't allow, you know, like the private doctors to charge fee for the telemedicine. So this is discouraging them, because for them it's a kind of extra effort they're putting in. So if they're not being allowed to charge for their fee for the time they are allocating, I mean, it would be a kind of you know, like discouraging factors to them. At the end of the day, we have to see how they are motivated. So the government policies at the different levels are challenging in this aspects, I think. But the telemedicine is very much required, and Novik is the one hospital which always been in the forefront of technologies. We always believe in being a smart and paperless hospital. So we are not just doing telemedicine, we are doing a lot of things. We're coming with a lot of mobile apps and a lot of other things which will make the entire experience of the patients a very comfortable, a very knowledgeable for them, and then they will also help the doctors, you know, like to treat them well with the proper diagnostics, and a lot of data would be available to doctors to treat them. So we are actually working on making an entire hospital a smart and paperless hospital.
Provided the limitation in telehealth care, are there any plans to grow in that side?
I mean, like telemedicine has a constraint, but then as I've said just now, that the entire technology is changing, it's disrupting everything. So the entire game is really changing very fast, and the way the mobile access is increasing, even the Panwala in the remotest part of the Nepal has a mobile which has internet connections, and now soon if we can have a 5G, so it can change the entire thing. I mean, like the telemedicine, you cannot believe to the extent that there will be, I mean, like for Nepal it may be like another 10 years we have to wait for it, but then if you see how the 5G would work, because 5G would kill, I mean, will eradicate the lag time, you know, like, so what will happen, there's a surgeon in America, he needs to operate a patient in Kathmandu, say for example, and then there will be a machine, as like a machine which can operate there in America, and there will be a machine here, so it can simulation. So he will use his hands there, sitting in America, and the machine will start working rightly so as he's operating, because there will be no lag. Because if, say for example, because the 4G is say 5-10 seconds, if it does this and here it will happen after 10 seconds, it may kill the patients. But if it will be just in the right time, if he's just doing that and the machine is operating in the like without zero lag, it will be as good as the doctor is operating you know, like patients. So telemedicine doesn't have a limitation, I tell you.
Okay.
So
but the policy limitations.
The policy limitations there, and then as the 5G would come, and because of course the internet. So soon the 5G would come. You can believe, you can. I mean, like the quantum of jump it would take after that. I mean, like it's a different world altogether. It would be. So telemedicine, more than telemedicine, they will telesurgery.
Okay.
So you see how forward it can go up to.
Okay. So back in 1994, Novik was established as a first private hospital. So during that time, health technology in Nepal was not quite advanced. How do you see the scenario changing in last 26 years?
I mean, I see it's a very positive note. When we started 26 years before, like we wanted to create some innovation. So innovation for us was at that time to retain the doctors, because what was happening, the doctors, because they didn't have enough facilities to, you know, like practice, and then not enough technology to have hands-on experience. They used to go to different part of the world. They don't used to be in Nepal. So one of the innovations we were thinking to retain those doctors back in the country, so that we can stop the drainage of the talent from the country. At the same time, the situation was as such that the people have to go to the India even for the smallest of the problems, because they didn't have any trust on the medical system over here. And then it was, as you said, that was not well equipped to diagnose and provide the right kind of treatment to the patients of Nepal, to the citizen of Nepal. So there was two things which came into our mind, that we wanted to provide a people, a citizen of a country, the best treatment and affordable price. And then at the same time, we wanted to retain not just doctors, but the paramedical staff and others. So to be in the country, so they don't have to go elsewhere for the greener postures and for their livelihoods. So those were the two things which were the determining factor. And then of course a lot of emotions of a chairman, like when he wanted, because he being quite a social thinker, he really wanted to create some impact in the society by some business model and all. So this was the directing forces behind when we started Novik. We made a very humble beginning within some OPD centers, and we become this big now, and we have bigger plans in days to come. And we were the pioneer in this field, when this was the private hospital, with the first hospital to bring the cath lab. Previously it used to have done all open surgeries and all. So we're the first hospital. And then what happened, that if you see, like, we made losses for another 15 years. When we started, we kept on pumping funds.
Okay.
I mean, you can understand a business which is not doing good for say 10, 15 years and putting money every now and then. It's not goes a day or night when you think of closing it, but then we always have a belief, because our intentions was different, our objective was different, as I've just shared with you. We kept on believing that the day would come, that the day would come. I mean, like, of course, we kept on inducting fund, and today is a history in a way. But then what it's created, though we made an humble beginning, but it has created a kind of confidence in the other private hospital, other players in the market, that a private hospital is a possibility, is a reality, and it can be done. So you see today, like, the private hospitals can boast of offering, say, 16,000 beds, which is more than double the capacity of what government hospitals offer, and they provide more than 50% of the care. And then for the critical care, the most of the cares are provided by the private hospital. I mean, like, so if you see, like, so this could be possible. This could be possible because of an initiation by the Novik IC, because that has given them enough feeling, enough confidence that, okay, a private hospital in Nepal can be started, can be run successfully. And still I feel that the number, if you see the patient to bed ratio in Nepal is 0.3. So it's too low. It's too low. Still needs to be increased. So there's enough opportunities, enough scope for the other private players to come, even for the governments to come and build up this healthcare. So, but again, it's not just Kathmandu. Nepal is not just Kathmandu. It has to be taken out from Kathmandu to the other part of the Nepal, to all the capital cities of all the provinces, and to the all remotest part. I mean, so that every Nepali can have the best of the healthcare facilities. And here the government has to do a lot of things. So you see, if you compare how the facilities are given in India, they get land for almost free. But here you invest a lot of money, because land is so expensive in Nepal. If you go to the farthest part of Nepal, it's damn expensive to buy a piece of land. So what happens here, if you want to build a hospital here, so you invest a lot of things on the like land and building, which you could actually invest in technologies. So instead of investing technology, you are just ending up, exhausting your funds by just building up the land, buying the land and the building. While in the other part of the world, and especially if you take the example of India, it's given free of cost by the government. So some policy encouragement is needed in this field to the private hospital from the governments, so that they can come forward. And it's not easy business. As I said, we made a loss for another 15 years when it started. Maybe the market is ready, but still the hospital will take 6 to 8 years to come into break even. So, and this is happening because there's a lot of investment in the land and the civil cost. So here the government can do a lot of things by supporting the private hospitals in terms of providing the land and the kind of some seed money for the civil or some kind of infrastructure facilitations. So that can actually help the private investors. It will one way reduce the gestation period, so it will make them come forward more enthusiastically. At the same time, they could be able to spend this money in technologies, which is actually treatment. which is actually treatment, no? Which because the civil is there, the building is there, but then the treatment happens to the machines and the infrastructures, other infrastructures we built around that premises of the land.
So nowadays we can see a lot of private players are getting attracted towards the health sector, and especially after this pandemic, people have realized the value of health. So chances are that more players are going to come. How do you view the competition in health sector?
I think I've just said it that there's no competition as such, because I said that the bed to private hospital, bed to patient ratio is 0.3. If you talk about a bed to a patient to doctor ratio, it is 1:1724. If the World Health Organization says that it should be 1:1000. And if you talk about the remote part of the Nepal, the ratio is 1:1.15 lakhs. 1,15,000 per patients. I mean,
so
like,
do you think that we need more?
We need
more health services.
more health services in Nepal actually, but it has to be diversified. It has to
Not
be taken out
just
of
in Kathmandu?
it has to be taken out of the Kathmandu. So we need more number of doctors, we need more number of beds, we need more number of paramedical staffs to run the facilities. There's a study that $1 billion spent by the Nepalese outside Nepal every year in treatment of their like critical illness like cancer and other things. I mean, this $1 billion for economy of a 36, 37, $8 billion in the terms of nominal GDP. It's a big sum of money. And if you see even the government spending, this is just less than 6%, $40 per person. I mean, for the country like us, it has to be more than 10%. Where infrastructure is so poor, we should spend more money on the healthcare. At least the GDP of 10% should be spent on the healthcare facilities, which is less than 6%, which is too low. Which is too low, so it has to be increased. And as I tell you, like this is one part of it, but other part of it, which is still untapped, is like the mobile health things. Is about the wearables, about the other things, a lot of remote medicines, and a lot of things has to be done in this ecosystem of the healthcare. It's so big from the patient falling sick to getting cured and the post treatment and everything. So I mean, I really encourage the young entrepreneurs and the young, they should come forward with a lot of innovations and new thinking, that how they can make the healthcare cheap, affordable, accessible, at the same time impactful to all. Because a lot to be done in this area. It's very much needed, because the way it's becoming expensive, the way it's becoming the reach of the poor, it's becoming everyday expensive.
Exactly. Yeah.
Everyday expensive. So it has to be a lot of innovation is needed. How we can cut the cost, because until we cannot cut the cost, it cannot be cheap. So to make the healthcare affordable, we have to make it. We have to cut the cost through the utilization of technology, through the reinventions, through remodeling of the facilities, everything. So I really encourage and really invite, the young entrepreneurs to, because now Nepal has good numbers of modern thinkers, and you can think of innovative, and then also come with the IT backgrounds, So come up with those kind of products and services which can actually help, making this entire delivery more impactful and at the lesser cost, which is being provided by the hospitals.
Okay. So coming to BLC, the focus of BLC has been in agribusiness sector as well. So as per our government, and even there are opportunities of generating employment in agriculture sector, but what are the challenges for a corporate house to invest into agribusiness in Nepal?
See, corporate house can bring a couple of things. Corporate house can bring access to the finance, access to the market, and can give it an organized system. But then if you see the reality of Nepal agriculture, access to finance comes 8th or 9th in the terms of priority. The first problems we have is of mull. Like we don't have fertilizers, we don't have seeds, we don't have equipments, we don't have tools, we don't have irrigation facilities. So I mean, these are the facilities, these are the things which needs to be created by the government. I mean, the private sector can't do much here. Of course, we can do our 2 cents here, but then see, access of finance, access of market is a far thing. Is a far thing. So even a corporate company like CG coming and we're investing into agriculture, you will not believe we are into this. Like we started 2 business. One is like, of course we have other business like dairy and all, but 2 business particularly I would talk about. One is seed multiplications, which I said is one of the bigger problem of the farmers, and other is the herbal processing, which is to provide the access to the market. to the, like, because of most of the herbs, wild herbs and the cultivators, they are being sold to the Indian traders at the throwaway the peanut prices, which is so expensive, so valuable. But then there always comes a problem, like with the entire ecosystem, where the organized, the corporate works in certain organized manner, but then there's unorganized sectors which has no definitions, no boundaries, and they work on their own in the different manners. And then also comes a problem, like with the farmers and all, like once you provide them this kind of facilities, like they really don't cooperate well with the corporate house, like in terms of payments and all.
Okay.
So we did two business in sense of like dairy we are doing good, but in terms of seed multiplication, which is one of the priority, and the herbs, you'll not believe, we again, like as like the healthcare, we made millions and millions of losses, crores and crores of rupees losses in two sectors. But still,
and agriculture is definitely a loss.
It's a loss making business. It's a very risky business, not because it is risky in nature, but it's because it's not being properly taken up by the like the people. So they take some long time to understand the benefit which would come from the corporate sectors. And then there are the other challenges I have shared with you, because access to market and finance comes 9th, 10th or 11th or whatever. There's not the priority problems of the farmers, which must be addressed by the government. At the, we are hearing about many irrigation projects since I have born. So every year be hopeful that something would happen in those fronts, but doesn't happen. Like you see many of the, because as you see the demography of Nepal, we have very limited number of lands which are agricultural suitable, like which can be farmed, which can be like cultivated, because of the lot of mountainous and the Himalaya areas. So out of that, lot of areas are still like unirrigated, or even irrigated with a very less or inefficient way of irrigation. So there's the possibilities, and the per hectare output, the cultivation is too low in Nepal. So the cost of cost of the production is very high in comparison to our neighboring countries. And that's why we never be competitive. We always find sense to get it imported from India or other part of the world than actually consuming our product, because our cost of production is too high. So because of the problems I'm sharing with you. So the government actually, there's more than the commercial benefits, it's a need of the country. We have to be agriculture dependent, self-dependent. I mean, we should not be dependent on other countries to give us rice, to give us potato, to give us onion, to give us lentils. I mean, there's everything which we import. Actually. And then there used to be time we used to export to our neighboring countries. I mean, like it's a big shift. It's a big shift, and it's not a right thing actually. So the corporate like us are thinking from that perspective that the country like Nepal has to be self-reliant, at least for its food. So because of the food security and safety, it should be like the priority of any country. And we're always dependent. We have seen the blockades, we have seen the other things, and we have seen how we have suffered during those period of times. So it is very much important, and the corporate sectors like us are actually trying to build up those ecosystem. But then it's very expensive, it's very risky, and it's loss making, because there's no hand holding by the government.
So are there any plans to grow investment or expand the businesses in agriculture sector?
Of course we are doing our part. So our priority is to get these 2-3 business which I'm talking to break even first of all, because you don't bleed all the time.
Okay.
So to put them into the break even, and then we'll think of we have many projects in our mind.
Okay.
We really want to do big in terms of agriculture, but then we must not forget the reality that agriculture is not the choice of a young Nepalese.
True.
It's not a choice of young Nepalese, because they can't make a full day like eatings by working whole day in the farm, because the way our agriculture, so they are not inclined towards the agriculture anymore. So agriculture is needed to make the food safety part like save, and to protect that part, that put that part in line. But if you ask any Nepali, are you interested in agriculture? Do you see your future in agriculture? You very rarely will find an answer, yes, I see, I'm enthusiastic about it. So we have to face this reality that agriculture is not the priority of Nepal in terms of its aspiration of the youth. Aspirations of youth. So then you'll see once the generations will older, and that's how it's happening. That's how, because we're going abroad, and there's nobody to farm in the villages. So that's how the lands are balanced and nobody's taking care of it, kind of things is happening. And this is going to happen more and more, I tell you, in the days to come. So government has to do some policy reforms, and we have to commercialize it. We have to make it really technology oriented, so that we can increase the livings of the farmers by so that they can make more money by working for others than working on its own farm. So the priority of the country would be, of course, the tourism and the hydro and other service sector, and of course industries. But the agriculture is neat.
In terms of words, there are a lot of priorities, especially after this pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, of course it happens. It always happens. But then we don't be able to retain that enthusiasm once the situation's over. I mean, there was same thing when there was a blockade by the neighboring country, but then we couldn't retain those enthusiasm. So it dies down very fast. And I see, it's not about this pandemic or anything. I tell you, it's about the aspirations of the Nepalese. So if a Nepalese young person is interested in agriculture, my answer would be to ask him only. Because I really see people find themselves so excited about agriculture because the way it has become. So it has to be big policy shift, big policy work has to be done. Groundwork has to be done at the agriculture to make it commercially feasible, possible, and interested for the young Nepalese people.
So apart from agribusiness and health, what will be the focus area for BLC for next 10 years?
I mean, of course, priority, if you see, we are a lot of focused in the healthcare. We want to take, open up a hospital in each provinces of Nepal, and we want to take it to the, all the Nepalese. They don't have to come to Kathmandu for the treatment. So we want to take it to the, to the last people in the country. So we want to go for satellite centers like 100-bedded or 150-bedded hospital in a different part of the country. So that's the first focus at this moment. Of course, agriculture, we are doing a lot. And beside that, we into the food processing, we into some kind of construction. So we want to consolidate in the areas we are working. And we are not looking for new areas at this moment. But the next 10 years would be to strengthen what we're doing and at least make a Novik 1,000-bedded hospital in terms of the overall capacity, including Kathmandu. So this is a first priority, and then in agriculture we want to make our business break even, and because this kind of business will actually help in the overall GDP of the country in terms of, because the seed is one of the biggest problems, the market for the herbs is the biggest problem. So these are the areas we are working on. Of course, as the new opportunity would come in, because we as investors, we are always open to the new opportunities. So if the new opportunities would come, we definitely would like to enter into the area for tourism, and then of course the steel and constructions and the hydro.
Thank you so much, sir, for your time, and
so much,
the conversation was really insightful.
Thank you so much, Nikita. That's my pleasure.
Thank you for watching us. For more updates and programs, keep watching nepalghoj.com. Till then, take care.